The 3-1 lead. A lead that's supposed to give a team the ultimate amount of comfort. At this point, all you need to do is win one game in the next 3 and you win the series. But in 2016, the meaning, the connotation of that phrase changed.
Oh, blocked by James! LeBron James with the rejection! Wow. Irving's picked up by Steph Curry, 6 to shoot. He's at the right point. He stutter steps. He launches at 3. He nailed it! It's over! The Cavaliers are NBA champions!
Congratulations, you're the first team in the history of the NBA to come back from a 3-1 deficit.
And if this wasn't enough, what this ultimately led to was the Golden State Warriors going after the biggest free agent of that offseason, that being one Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant signing with said Warriors. If you don't believe me, here's a quote from KD himself. What if the Warriors won the 2016 NBA championship? Better yet, what if the Warriors not only won the championship, but Curry completed the perfect season and dominated the NBA Finals as well as he should have? How would the NBA have changed? Well, today we're going to explore that timeline in what if the Golden State Warriors won in 2016. As usual, man, these what if videos take a long time to make, and I would love to make this like a staple series on the channel. But these aren't the only videos I make. I have a lot of videos planned for you guys in 2021. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a beat, man. You're not gonna want to miss a beat this year. It would mean a lot if we can get this one to 7,000 likes. But with that being said, let's go ahead and start off with the 2016 offseason. Now let's get the elephant out the way and talk about Kevin Durant. Where is Kevin Durant going now that the Golden State Warriors won the NBA championship? Now, as we've just established, if the Warriors won the 2016 championship, Kevin Durant probably wouldn't have signed with the Warriors. And while I was pondering where KD would have gone if he didn't go to Golden State, I found out that KD actually went on the Bill Simmons podcast and specifically said that his second choice was to return to the Thunder. His third choice, it seemed like, was go to Boston and then the Clippers, but that doesn't really matter in this case. KD is on the record saying that he would have stayed with the Thunder if the Warriors won, and that is what we're going with. More specifically, he re-signs with a 1+1 deal just to keep his options open for the future. Now, the next domino that would fall is Al Horford. Reports back then actually said that if KD stayed in OKC, there was a good chance he would have signed with the Thunder instead of signing with the Boston Celtics like he actually did. So in this hypothetical timeline, Al Horford does sign with the Thunder in order to help them take down the Golden State Warriors and to also be reunited with his college coach, Billy Donovan. Also, do keep in mind that the Thunder still trade for Oladipo and Sabonis in this case. The Boston Celtics, on the other hand, who now don't have Al Horford, throw the bag to Hassan Whiteside. The Miami Heat, on the other hand, end up spending their money on lower tier free agents, but honestly, given how Whiteside panned out to be in the next couple of years, this doesn't really make that much of a difference. So into the 2017 season we go, where the Golden State Warriors win 60 games instead of the 67 they won in real life. Many of these teams tend to coast through the regular season in these scenarios to preserve their energy for the playoffs. The Oklahoma City Thunder, on the other hand, improve on their season last year and end up winning 59 games. Now with KD and Al Horford on the team, Russ never averages a triple-double and doesn't have the same narrative that he did in real life, so he doesn't end up winning MVP. James Harden, on the other hand, still does his thing, and he ends up winning the 2017 MVP. Out in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics fall from the first seed all the way to 5th as they lose 5 more games this year, not because of how good Al Horford was, but more so because of how Whiteside affected their spacing and how that affects IT in a negative way, specifically this year. And now we get into the NBA playoffs, where out east, the Cleveland Cavaliers still roll through the East. The only slight difference really being that the Wizards beat the Celtics this time in just the first round. Out west, in the top of the conference, we have the Spurs as the 1 seed, the Golden State Warriors at 2, the Oklahoma City Thunder at 3, the Houston Rockets at 4, and the Los Angeles Clippers at 5. The Clippers end up upsetting the Rockets in 6 games in the first round, and the top 3 seeds go into the second round as expected. And now we have the Clippers matched up against Spurs, and we get the highly anticipated Warriors versus Thunder matchup a round earlier than expected. The Spurs make quick work of the Clippers in 5 games, but honestly, no one really cares about that series, and the focus is on the Thunder versus Warriors series that's about to happen. And with the Thunder making the improvements that they made, this series ends up being a bloodbath as the teams trade wins every game, and this series goes to 7 games. And in game 7, Russell Westbrook's inefficiencies strike again, and the Golden State Warriors manage to advance to the Western Conference Finals yet again. Now in the conference finals, they matched up with the San Antonio Spurs. Now if you guys remember, in real life, Kawhi Leonard got injured in game 1 versus the Warriors, but keep in mind, in our hypothetical, the Warriors didn't even need to sign Zaza Pachulia, and also the circumstances are different enough to bypass that injury in this hypothetical. Also in real life, there is a heated argument on if the Spurs would have won if Kawhi never got injured in game 1. So if there's an argument that the Spurs would have beaten the Warriors with KD if Kawhi was healthy, then they should be able to beat them without KD if Kawhi is healthy, right? Well, I am on the side of the fence that believes that the Warriors would have just beaten them in 5 or 6 games instead of the sweep that happened. But without KD on the Warriors, I do think that the series goes to 6 or 7 games instead, but the Warriors still do pull this one out and make it to the NBA Finals for a 3rd straight year, to be matched up with the Cavs for a 3rd straight year. Now in real life, the Golden State Warriors blew this Cavs team out the water, but I feel like a lot of people really took this Cavs team for granted because the way this team was performing leading up to the finals was insane. It just happened that they were matched up with the KD Warriors in the finals and were just completely outmatched. But in this hypothetical timeline, the Cleveland Cavaliers are able to capitalize on this momentum while also going up against an extremely tired Golden State Warriors team coming off back-to-back 7-game series, along with three-peat fatigue they've been experiencing all year. And the Cleveland Cavaliers end up being your 2017 NBA champion, and LeBron James captures his 3rd ring and Cleveland's first in franchise history. Into the 2017 offseason we go, where Kevin Durant decides this is the breaking point. If he can't win with all that help, then to him, he needs to sign somewhere else because the problem is not the talent. It really might just be Westbrook's underperformances, and he just needs a restart on another team. Now with the Warriors re-signing Harrison Barnes and the rest of the crew in the prior offseason, making space for KD becomes really hard for them. If they want to get KD, it would have to be in a matter of a sign and trade, and quite frankly, what Golden State can offer to OKC isn't enough for them to be interested. Along with the fact the Warriors would be too stacked, combined with the fact that they're also in the same conference. In this scenario, the two teams who are competing for KD's services are the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Clippers, with the Celtics having the proper cap space to sign KD, along with assets to trade for another star on top of him, and the Los Angeles Clippers, who already have a solid core together. However, they would have to give up re-signing Blake Griffin in order to sign Kevin Durant. Now keep in mind, in this case, Kyrie never asks to be traded from Cleveland, as LeBron's free agency decision wasn't as up in the air as it was in real life. But also keep in mind that with the Celtics being bounced out in the first round, Isaiah Thomas never needs his hip surgery and is way closer to 100% than what he was in real life. And so Danny Ainge and the Boston Celtics pull it off and sign Kevin Durant to a max deal, and on top of signing KD, also trade their number 1 pick, the 2018 Nets pick, along with salary filler, to the Indiana Pacers in order to acquire one Paul George. And just like that, the Celtics are armed with a starting lineup of Isaiah Thomas, Jaylen Brown, Paul George, Kevin Durant, and Hassan Whiteside. Gordon Hayward re-signs with the Utah Jazz instead. In this timeline, there isn't a KD Warriors juggernaut of a team, so Danny Ainge becomes more willing to trade his assets. Now what about Gordon Hayward? Well, he just re-signs with the Jazz. The Indiana Pacers take Markelle with the first pick in this draft, and the 76ers end up with Jason Tatum. Chris Paul still does end up being traded to the Houston Rockets, and the Oklahoma City Thunder do decide to stick with the core that they have and want to give Russell Westbrook his fair shot of being a first option. The Golden State Warriors, on the other hand, really have no option but to do only minor retoolings to their roster, but best believe with the track record that they have and the talent that they do still have with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, they are still considered as one of the deadliest teams in the league. Out in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics end up winning 63 games in their first season together, while the defending champion Cleveland Cavaliers end up nabbing 57 wins themselves as they go on a quest to repeat. Out in the Western Conference, the Houston Rockets still end up winning a ridiculous 65 games like they do in real life. The Oklahoma City Thunder, on the other hand, actually end the season still being a very solid team with the improvements of Victor Oladipo and end up winning a very respectable 54 games. This season becomes a season where Russ averages a triple-double and And given the fact that he led the Thunder to 54 wins after they just lost Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook ends up winning the 2018 MVP award. Into the playoffs we go, and let's just cut to the chase, man. Let's go to the conference finals, where we have the Boston Celtics versus the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference, and out west, we have the Golden State Warriors versus the Houston Rockets. In the West, the Houston Rockets finally do the impossible and stop the Golden State Warriors from making the NBA Finals, as they beat the Warriors in a very convincing 6 games. And Chris Paul in this scenario never has that very specific hamstring injury he suffered in real life. Out in the Eastern Conference, man, we got KD, PG, and IT versus the reigning champs with Bron, Kyrie, and K-Love. This series ends up being a classic, and the series ends up going to a Game 7 in Boston. Now keep in mind what I just said. 2018 LeBron is in a Game 7 against Boston. Kyrie Irving is in a Game 7. Paul George is in a Game 7. So with those factors in mind, LeBron James drops 45 in the Garden, and he ends up leading the Cleveland Cavaliers to their 4th straight NBA Finals appearance. And now we have a NBA Finals matchup featuring the Cavs with LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love, and the 2018 Houston Rockets. And while the Rockets are able to make this a competitive series, the Cavs just wanted this one more, and they end up winning the series in 6 games, and LeBron James captures ring number 4, Finals MVP number 4, and his 2nd time being a back-to-back champion. In the 2018 offseason, LeBron James ends up re-signing to the Cleveland Cavaliers for a 4-year max deal, as it really has nothing to ask for right now. Kyrie Irving, on the other hand, is willing to stay on the Cavs for a little longer. However, he signs a 2+1 deal instead, just to give him a little flexibility in the next couple of years. The Warriors, on the other hand, are very desperate to retool their roster, and they end up overpaying DeMarcus Cousins more than what they did in real life. And with the trade market being as dry as it is right now for the Warriors, there really aren't many moves that can make a huge difference for them. Now, luckily for the Warriors, the West, at least at the top of the conference, was weaker than most years, and they surprisingly end up with the #1 record in the conference with just 56 wins. Out in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics do the exact same thing they did last year and win 62 games. The Raptors and the Bucks stay at the top of the conference, and the back-to-back champions end up underperforming just a little bit in the regular season and finish as the 4th seed in the East. In the West, with the Rockets having a down year, it's pretty clear that the Warriors are the best team, and the Warriors make it out the West once again. Out in the East, however, dogfight. An absolute dogfight. In the first round, the Cleveland Cavaliers are immediately pushed to 7 games by Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, Jimmy Butler, and the 76ers. But due to LeBron James' greatness, the Cavs do still end up pulling it out in a Game 7 victory. The Boston Celtics, the Toronto Raptors, and the Milwaukee Bucks all make it out of the first round, and now we have the Celtics and the Cavs matched up in the second round for another rematch. And with Jaylen Brown's development this season, along with better chemistry and the Cavs having that dreaded three-peat fatigue, the Boston Celtics managed to do the impossible and stop LeBron James from making it to the finals for the first time in nearly a decade. On the other side of the East bracket, the Raptors and the Bucks are matched up in the second round, where like in real life, the Raptors beat the Bucks in 6 games. And in the Eastern Conference Finals, now we have the Boston Celtics versus the Toronto Raptors, and it is the Boston Celtics who come out on top as they sweep the Raptors due to the fact that their offensive firepower was just way too much for the Raptors to handle. And into the NBA Finals we go, where the Warriors are matched up with the Boston Celtics, where the Boston Celtics defense was just way too much for Curry to be effective against, and the Boston Celtics become the 2019 NBA champions with Kevin Durant winning Finals MVP. Now, the 2019 offseason, as you guys remember, is when the league takes a drastic change. But in this hypothetical, KD just won a championship. Paul George is in Boston and is pretty content there. LeBron and Kyrie just signed extensions with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The only other moves that do still take place is the Russell Westbrook-Chris Paul trade and Jimmy Butler signing with the Miami Heat. So now we have a couple of questions. Number 1, what happens with Kawhi? Number 2, where does Anthony Davis go with LeBron in Cleveland? And number 3, where does Kemba Walker go now that the Boston Celtics don't have the cap space to sign him and also really don't need him? In this hypothetical, Kawhi Leonard still does actually sign with the Clippers, but instead of the Clippers trading Shai and all of those picks for Paul George, the Los Angeles Clippers still do end up doing the same thing, except now it's for one Anthony Davis. Jesus. And now the Los Angeles Clippers are armed with Anthony Davis and Kawhi Leonard on the same team. That's insane. Kemba Walker, on the other hand, ends up signing with the Dallas Mavericks with their young core of Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. A surprise, however, in this offseason is Kyrie Irving wanting out of the Cleveland Cavaliers with 1 year left on his 2+1 deal, as he wants to have his own team. And luckily for the Cleveland Cavaliers, it works out very nice that the Brooklyn Nets just so happen to have D'Angelo Russell, who is a perfect fit for what the Cavs are looking for to replace Kyrie, so they complete the trade to send Kyrie to the Brooklyn Nets. So now we go into the 2020 season, and the Golden State Warriors still end up having their disastrous season. Out in the Western Conference, with the Lakers being a non-factor this year, the Los Angeles Clippers end the season with a record on pace for 65 wins. The only other threat to them is surprisingly the Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic, as they finished the season with the second best record in the conference. Out in the East, the Bucks continue to do what they do, and they finished the season with the first seed. The Celtics finished second, the Raptors finished third, the Cavs finished fourth, the 76ers finished fifth, and the Miami Heat finished sixth. Now we get into the playoffs, where out west, the Los Angeles Clippers are matched up with the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately, with Porzingis being out the series isn't even close, and the Clippers end up beating the Mavs in 5 games. Out in the East, the Celtics once again make it to the conference finals. In the other side of the Eastern bracket, the Cavs are still good enough to beat the 76ers, who didn't have Ben Simmons and lost Jimmy Butler. However, once it came to the Bucks were just too much to handle for the Cavs, both offensively and defensively. And now we have the Bucks and the Celtics meeting up in the conference finals, where the Boston Celtics are able to beat the Milwaukee Bucks in a very close 6-game series. And now in this hypothetical timeline, we have the Los Angeles Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis facing off with the Boston Celtics with Isaiah Thomas, Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant, and Paul George. The series does end up going to 7 games. However, the defensive duo of Anthony Davis and Kawhi Leonard was just way too much for the Celtics to handle. It also doesn't help that the Celtics really didn't have an answer for Anthony Davis, and it is the Los Angeles Clippers that come out as your 2020 NBA champions, and Anthony Davis wins Finals MVP. If the Golden State Warriors won in 2016, a lot changes in the NBA, and quite frankly, it more so has to do with KD not signing with the Warriors if they won than it does with the Warriors specifically winning that championship. In this timeline, the Boston Celtics end up winning the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, the Los Angeles Clippers end up landing the 2 best two-way players in the league in Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis, and the Cleveland Cavaliers ended up as back-to-back champions in 2017 and 2018 and managed to keep Kyrie and LeBron longer than advertised. The Golden State Warriors, on the other hand, miss out on 1 more ring and 1 more finals appearance with Kevin Durant on the team, and the Los Angeles Lakers never end up getting their dream duo of Anthony Davis and LeBron James. The Oklahoma City Thunder, well, they honestly don't really gain much from KD staying, aside from an extra round in the playoffs in 2017 and 2018. And since they never traded for Paul George, they never get that boatload of assets they got from the Los Angeles Clippers. And with Steph Curry leading the Warriors to 2 rings, having a Finals MVP, 3 Finals appearances, and the most dominant 2-year stretch in league history, along with LeBron having 4 rings and 4 Finals MVPs already, I do believe KD all-time is better off in his scenario in real life than in this scenario where he only has 1 ring and 1 Finals MVP. However, I don't think KD ever gets the scrutiny that he did in real life, and the 1 ring that he did win in Boston is valued way more than the 2 he won in real life. But regardless, it is still just 1 ring. Thank you again for making it all the way through. Like I said, these videos are very big projects, so make sure to leave a like on the video. But with that being said, I'm out. Peace.